my name is Natalie. Today I wanted to do another nonfiction challenge related video and specifically talking about the sports nonfiction challenge. So if you don't know what the nonfiction reading challenge is, it is a challenge that I created for this entire year where I made 16 specific challenges to broaden my horizons within nonfiction, to challenge myself and to have a lot of fun just exploring different niches within nonfiction. So I've done a announcement video for the nonfiction reading challenge, which will be linked, where I talk about all of the challenges. But today I wanted to specifically talk about the read nonfiction about sports. I made this challenge in combination with read a sports or food nonfiction. I have not read a lot of food nonfiction, and I think the main reason for that is that I have been a vegetarian for a long time and right now I am a vegan. So I think a lot of the nonfiction books that I have seen are sort of the traditional sense, are meat oriented. But if you have any recommendations for food nonfiction that doesn't really talk about the meat part of food, or if it isn't really meat oriented, do let me know, because I haven't read that many, and I wouldn't mind reading them. I am really into food, but yeah, I have had this sort of barrier. But today I wanted to talk about sports nonfiction because that is what I wanted to do with this challenge. And the reason that this challenge was even created was because I read Leap In last year by Alexandra Hemingsley, which is a memoir of the author learning how to swim. So she had this fear of swimming, and particularly fear of water. So she decided to take on this challenge of learning how to swim, taking up lessons and actually learning the proper techniques, and taking on larger and larger challenges in various places, and talks about the progress of that and all of the fears and uncertainties in connection with learning something like this. I picked that up quite spontaneously, based mostly on the cover, to be honest. I just thought that it sounded like fun, and the cover had this sort of vintage look, and I love vintage posters, so there was something about the cover that really drew me in. So I decided to pick it up on a whim. And I liked it so much that after that I have been on the lookout for more swimming related nonfiction. So I've made a full video talking about books on swimming. But the one that I read for this specific challenge was Swell by Landreth. I will only briefly talk about it here because I know I've talked about it several times by now. But it is a book talking about the history of women swimming, in terms of being able to get access to pools and to oceans and seas, to be able to even enter into the water, and then to be able to compete and to swim and to be taught how to swim, because at first women were so controlled in access even to swimming and to water. Most people who knew how to swim were men, and so they had to be taught how to swim by men, which was another problematic thing, because all of the limitations on women was based around the fact that women exposing so much of their bodies and their skin would tempt the men, and would be dangerous both for the men and the women. So this book looks at the various things that has changed in access, in techniques, and in competition, and all of those things, also talking about specific women, and it all interweaves with Landreth's own swimming story. If you're interested in women's history, and you're interested in the suffragettes or things like of that nature, you might find this interesting, because there's a lot of this that is connected with women's rights to access specific fields, or being able to be taught certain things. Swimming obviously is a kind of skill that is often life-saving, and this book looks at that as well. So I found it a lot of fun. I also have started listening to an audiobook called Jog On, How Running Saved My Life by Mackie. Mackie ended her 20s in tears. She could barely find the strength to get off the sofa, let alone piece her life back together, until one day she did something she had never done of her own free will. She pulled on a pair of trainers and went for a run. So this book is about someone who has been married and the marriage falls apart in less than a year, and in order to deal with all of her emotions in connection with this relationship falling apart, and also her own mental health issues, she has a lot of anxiety and depression, she decides to start running. And it's a very spontaneous idea, but it seems like it is exactly what she needs. So I've only listened to about an hour of this book, but I already love it. So I think I might have found a new niche within sports nonfiction, maybe. I hope so, because I think running is in similarity to swimming has this, for me, this symbolic idea of being free, the feeling of letting go of control, or of being set free from the need of control. I also wanted to talk about a few books that I have read in previous years that are sports nonfiction that I would definitely recommend. So first, I've already mentioned Leap In, and I'm not going to say anything more about that. Obviously I recommend it. But another book about ballet is Winter Season by Tony Bensley, I think. And this is a book about a woman who worked as a ballerina in the 80s, if I remember correctly. And it's just her memoir of basically a diary of her time working a particular season as a ballerina, and about the various aspects of being a professional athlete. Ballet it's such a physically challenging sport that isn't necessarily only a sport, but also an art form. A lot of the time it seemed in this book that ballet is about working against your body's limitations, moving beyond it. And I think one of the things that I found so interesting in it is in general, something that I love in books and in reading, especially in memoirs, is to see someone so passionate about something, doing it so wholeheartedly and so focused. Winter Season does talk about all of the various interesting sides to being doing professional ballet, to being able to dance, and to bring this kind of perfection to life, but also talking about the physical pain and the sacrifices that they have to make in order to be able to do their job and to do their passion. So if you are interested in ballet and you want to read someone's personal story of that, and especially seeing sort of the day-to-day, the everyday situation, and how their life is governed by this job, this book might be worth picking up. Last year I read 2 books that talked about walking or hiking. I don't really know where to draw the line between those things, but I read both of those for the Wainwright shortlist last year. One of them is The Salt Path, and the other one is The Last Wilderness. They take different perspectives, because The Last Wilderness is about walking a specific area. It's about the author losing his hearing and walking the specific geographic location in various parts of the year, to see it in various seasons and in weathers. More a close look at one area rather than seeing new sights every day. And a lot of the discussion on hiking and walking in this book, and how his loss of hearing changes the way that he experiences all of this walking in nature. The Salt Path is more directly about the walking itself. The author and her husband decides to start walking the South Coast Path, I think it's called, after they've lost their jobs and their home, and also the husband is diagnosed with an incurable illness because they've lost their home. They don't really have anywhere else to go, and they decide to take this on as something to do and to give them time to process all of the big changes that has happened right at the same time, and they haven't really figured out how to live in a new way yet. So walking is a kind of meditative thing for them, and also an active thing. And I think in both cases it's the walking itself, the movement in nature, allows both authors to come to terms with changes. Having those big changes that you can't really do anything about, and coming to terms with those things. The walking itself is a sort of, you only have to focus on putting one foot in front of the other. There's a kind of meditation in that. And also meditation is a reoccurring theme and a healing process in sports nonfiction, at least the ones that I've read. Those are the books that I wanted to recommend that I've read in terms of sports nonfiction. And two I have on my to read that I'm very much looking forward to. We have Turning, which is another swimmer memoir. I don't really know the specifics of this book, but I picked it up because it's a memoir about swimming. And the other one is A Walker's Guide to Outdoor Clues and Signs. It is a book talking about specific things that you can find in nature and how to read them, what they mean. Sort of reading the weather or changes in the tides and things like that by doing nature observations. So I am planning to use the outdoor clues and signs in my actual walking. I'm planning to implement it in my own life. One thing that I would really like to read about is biking, because it's something that I started doing since last summer. I finally bought a new bike, and since then I've been trying to get into a routine of biking, and I really love the process of it, although I don't really have it as a set routine yet. But I would love to read a book about biking and the feeling of that. So if you have read any books on biking, then I would love to hear about them in the comments. Have you read any other sports nonfiction for this challenge, or just in general, any that you would like to chat to me about? Feel free to also leave that in the comments. I hope you're having a fantastic day, and I will talk to you soon. Bye.